Your grandmother kept secrets in her kitchen that she never told you. During World War II, she ate whale meat and called it dinner. She turned yellow powder into scrambled eggs and convinced herself they tasted right. For 6 years, British families like yours survived on food so strange, so desperate, that we've quietly erased them from history. I found the recipes they tried to forget. 20 meals that fed Churchill's Britain through its darkest hours. Number 1. Woolton Pie. You really can't talk about wartime food without mentioning Woolton Pie. This wasn't just a pie, it was practically a national hero. The brainchild of the Minister of Food himself, Lord Woolton. He basically commissioned chefs to come up with something hearty and nutritious that used readily available, unrationed ingredients. Picture this: a pastry crust, often made with oatmeal or even just water and flour, because butter was a pipe dream, filled to the brim with diced root vegetables. We're talking carrots, parsnips, potatoes, onions, sometimes swede or turnip if you had it, all mixed in a thick, savoury vegetable gravy, often with a hint of Marmite for that umami punch. It was wholesome, sticking, and it filled you up. People don't eat it now because we've got meat, haven't we? And honestly, plain boiled vegetables aren't quite the treat they used to be. Number 2. National Loaf. The infamous National Loaf was memorable, to say the least. From 1942, white bread was actually banned because it wasted valuable nutrients. So everyone ate this dense, brown, slightly grey bread made from wholemeal flour. It was nutritionally good but had a tendency to go stale really quickly, which, when you're on rations, was just another challenge. It was the bread of survival, and for some, it tasted of patriotism. These days, you can get a million kinds of wholemeal bread, but none quite like that distinctive, heavy National Loaf. Number 3. Dried egg. If you lived through the war, you'll remember the yellow powder that came in tins, usually from America. You mixed it with water to make scrambled eggs, omelets, or use it in baking. But the texture was often rubbery, sometimes grainy. It never quite tasted like a fresh egg, but it was vital protein. Number 4. Mock cream. For a sweet treat, there was mock cream. Because real cream? Forget about it. Butter and milk were strictly rationed. Mock cream was often a mixture of margarine, sugar, a bit of milk, and sometimes gelatin to make it hold its shape. Whipped up until it looked like cream, you'd slather it on a sponge cake or spread it on a biscuit. It wasn't the real thing, but it gave a little moment of joy. Now we have all the cream we could ever want, so mock cream is just a memory of leaner times. Number 5. Carrot jam. Carrots were unrationed and plentiful, thanks to all those Dig for Victory campaigns. When cooked down with a little sugar, lemon, and spices, they could make a passable jam. It was sweet, slightly earthy, and orange. You'd have it on your National Loaf. It wasn't strawberry or raspberry, but it was sweet, and that was a luxury. Nowadays, most people would just reach for actual fruit jam. Number 6. Whale meat. This next one shows true desperation. In the depths of the war, when other meats were scarce, the government encouraged people to eat whale meat as a good source of protein. It was very dark, a bit like venison, but with a strong, oily taste. Thankfully, it didn't catch on, and for very good reasons, we don't eat whale meat anymore. It's a stark reminder of how little choice people had. Number 7. Snoek. Ever heard of Snoek? Probably not. It's a type of snake mackerel from South Africa that was imported during post-war austerity because it was cheap and relatively abundant. But people hated it absolutely. It was dry, tough, and just not very pleasant. There was even a famous incident in 1947 when millions of tins were imported and just sat there unsold. People would rather go without. It's a classic example of a wartime necessity that utterly failed to win British hearts or stomachs. Number 8. Ration cake. Even during rationing, people found ways to celebrate. These cakes were incredibly inventive, using dried eggs, minimal flour, maybe a few precious dried fruits, and often carrots or beetroot to add moisture and sweetness without needing extra sugar. They tasted of effort and love and a little bit of defiance. Today, we've got glorious, buttery, sugary cakes galore, so the humble ration cake has faded into history, but its spirit of making do lives on. Number 9. Potato Pete hash. The government really pushed root vegetables, and Potato Pete was their propaganda mascot. Potato Pete hash was like corned beef hash, but with even more potato, and often made with any scraps of meat or just onions and herbs, boiled, mashed, Fried potatoes were the ultimate filler. Cheap, easy to grow, and filling. It wasn't gourmet, but it was reliable and kept hunger at bay. We still eat hash, but not usually quite so potato heavy. Number 10. Corned beef hash. Tinned corned beef was available even when fresh meat was scarce. It was versatile, salty, and a good source of protein, mixed with potatoes and onions. Fried until crispy, it was a proper, satisfying meal. It showed up everywhere, in lunchboxes, on dinner plates. It was cheap, kept well, and you could stretch it. Corned beef still exists, but it's more of a niche item now. Most people would opt for fresh beef rather than the tinned, jelly-like version. Number 11. Ration sausages. These were an experience. Meat was so scarce that sausages often contained more breadcrumb and filler than actual meat, sometimes as little as 35% meat. They were more like glorified savory dumplings, really. Flavor varied wildly depending on what scraps could be found and how much seasoning was added. You just had to be grateful for what you got. Today's sausages are generally far meatier and tastier, so the ration sausage is thankfully a thing of the past. Number 12. Marmite and cheese sandwich. Marmite was actually prized during the war for its B vitamins. Putting that intensely salty, yeasty spread with a thin slice of rationed cheese on a piece of national loaf wasn't just a snack, it was a nutritious little powerhouse. It was a taste of home, a comfort food for many, especially those serving. People still love Marmite and cheese, but its role as a wartime staple for nutritional value rather than just taste has mostly faded. Number 13. Parsnip Fritters. Parsnips, like carrots, were widely available and unrationed. Grated parsnips mixed with a little flour, perhaps some dried egg, and seasoned with salt and pepper, then fried until golden. They were a savory way to get more vegetables into the diet. Crispy, sweet, and surprisingly filling. A clever trick to make a humble root vegetable feel more exciting. Nowadays, we often roast parsnips, but fritters are not so common unless you're in a fancy gastropub trying to be retro. Number 14. Milkless, eggless pudding. These puddings showed pure ingenuity out of necessity. They often relied on stale bread, dried fruit, if you were lucky, and a combination of water, spices, and a little sugar to create something sweet and comforting. Sometimes a pinch of bicarbonate of soda helped it rise, baked or steamed and served warm, often with a drizzle of mock cream if you were feeling particularly indulgent. It wasn't rich, but it was a sweet ending to a sparse meal, and that mattered for morale. Number 15. Utility soups. These were the ultimate waste-nothing meals. A pot of water, any vegetable scraps you had, peelings, outer leaves, wilted greens, a few lentils or a handful of barley, maybe a tiny bit of rationed fat, all simmered for hours. The idea was to extract every last bit of flavor and nutrient. Each household's utility soup would be different, reflecting whatever was left in the larder. It was warm, filling, and ensured absolutely nothing went to waste. We still make soups today, but rarely out of sheer necessity and quite so utilitarian. Number 16. Sardine or Pilchard paste sandwiches. Tinned fish, like sardines or pilchards, were a vital source of protein and fats when fresh meat was almost non-existent. Mashed up with a bit of vinegar and pepper, then spread on national loaf, it was salty, fishy, and incredibly sustaining. Not exactly gourmet, but it kept you going. Today, most people reach for tuna or salmon if they want a fish sandwich, but those humble pilchards did their duty. Number 17. Liver and onions, ration style. If you managed to get your hands on any offal, you were making liver and onions. Liver was often less strictly rationed than prime cuts and was packed with iron. Thinly sliced liver, lightly floured with rationed flour, fried with plenty of unrationed onions was a hearty, if sometimes pungent, meal. Many would soak the liver in milk first to get rid of the metallic taste, but they'd make it anyway because it was real protein. Today, liver and onions is definitely a niche taste, far from the necessity it once was. Number 18. Dried milk pudding. National dried milk came in tins and was a godsend, especially for children. Mixed with a bit of water, a tiny bit of sugar if you could spare it, and sometimes a few oats, it made a thick, creamy, albeit slightly bland, dessert. It lacked the richness of fresh milk, but was warm, comforting, and provided essential calories. It brings back memories of that taste, but thankfully, fresh milk is now abundant. Number 19. Potato cakes or scones. These weren't fancy, light scones, but denser cakes made with mashed potatoes, mixed with a little flour, milk powder, and fat, usually margarine. Cooked on a griddle or in the oven, they were a versatile accompaniment to almost any meal. You'd have them with savoury dishes or sometimes with a smear of precious carrot jam for a pseudo-sweet treat. They were filling, cheap, and a testament to making a little go a long way. Number 20. Homity Pie. Similar in spirit to Woolton Pie, but often centered even more on potatoes and cheese when available, usually the very hard, unrationed national cheese. It was a satisfying vegetarian meal with a thick potato base layered with leeks, onions, and rationed cheese, all baked in a pastry case. It was another way to eat well without using precious meat rations. Simple ingredients, hearty results, a true wartime classic. These 20 meals tell a story not just of scarcity, but of incredible resilience, ingenuity, and shared national effort.